Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Terry Martin with the Illinois Channel TV, and I'm joined with Jeff Berkowitz again from Chicago. And Jeff and I are going to be taking a look at the campaigns and presidential campaigns. And Jeff, first of all, coming up a week from today, as we tape this on June the 20th, a week from today will be the first presidential debate of this campaign between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. They have, of course, debated before in the past, but they've never debated this early, and it's unusual. I should mention that some are speculating that with him being down in the polls as he is, that some members of the Democratic Party may have planned this, at least some of the conspiracy suggests, planned this early debate to see if Joe Biden can handle debating, and if he fails, then prior to the Democratic convention, they would still have the opportunity to pull Biden off the ticket and replace him with someone else. Some have even speculated Hillary Clinton might be pulled out of the bullpen. But we don't know what's going to happen. But as we sit here today, Jeff, first give me your initial reaction to what you expect to happen as we have this debate coming up on the 27th.
Well, look, there's intense preparation going on for Biden. The Democrats realize as a party, this is it. Everything's on this. He's in major trouble. So he's now in Camp David. He's going to be immersed in the next week and all sorts of stuff coming at him in mock debates, etc. Trump, on the other hand, it's even being said by some Democrats, it's now his to lose, both the debate and the election. So no matter the polls are fluctuating day to day, and yesterday Biden was up 3 points, and it was still a statistical tie, but doing a little better. Doesn't matter. You can look at Joe Biden, the country can look at Joe Biden, and if he looks the same way as he does today on November 5, he will lose. He doesn't look like a president. He doesn't act like a president. Everybody's shocked, well, not everybody, but I'm shocked that the polls are as close as they are.
Well, and as we talk about the polls, let me bring up that just today, as we tape this again on the 20th of June, we have Fox News issued a poll, and they said, as you can see here, judge President Biden's job performance on these three issues: the economy, inflation, and immigration. And as we can see, his numbers are just horrible. The best one there is, we can see, 41%. So if James Carville was correct, and it's the economy stupid, then it is bad news for President Biden on that issue. Now, on another set of issues, who describes the candidates better, honest and trustworthy, there Biden wins over Trump by 10 points. Cares about people like you, again, Biden wins by 6 points. But when we get into will win the debate, when has mental toughness to serve, there again, Trump is up by 7 points on that, and is judged as a strong leader. Trump is up by 10 points. So as you just mentioned, Jeff, Joe Biden is looking feeble. As we just prior to just taping this, we saw in the last week where Biden was over in the G7 meeting and was apparently staring off and had to be rescued by the Italian prime minister. And then at a fundraiser, former President Obama had to grab Trump by the arm and lead him off stage. So, somebody said what we're going to probably get on Thursday is the jacked up version of President Biden that we saw at the State of the Union. So maybe he'll come out jacked up and screaming again. But talk a bit about how this debate is being organized. They're not going to have a crowd. It seems that Biden laid out all the conditions, and Trump said he knew if he said no to any of the conditions, it would just give the Democrats an excuse to say, well, see there, Trump is afraid to debate Joe Biden. So Trump said yes.
Well, yeah. I mean, even look, the host is CNN, the moderators are CNN, and the one coming in September would be ABC. No Fox. I mean, CNN and ABC 7 are not known for their impartiality. And I'm not sure why Trump gave in to that condition, but he did. That maybe it's the confidence. Just put me on the stage with Biden and I'll win. I'm not going to fuss about who the moderator is and so forth. And
I think
with
that's it.
guests,
I think that's
that's it.
it. That
Yeah.
Trump thinks he can allow Biden to be Biden with him stammering. You know, again,
And
just the other day, we had a clip where Biden is with a number of supporters, and he tries to announce the Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, and he can't remember the guy's name. So
he kind of tries
the
to make it
idea,
up to his,
the idea that this man, this 81-year-old man, who I don't know if he has Alzheimer's, but the idea that he could serve 4 more years as president is, I don't know that anyone believes that. And I think this
nobody.
argument that we'd really be voting for Kamala Harris, I think that really has to be on the mind of a lot of voters.
Right, which goes to why the VP choice is so important. There'll be a debate, I believe, in August between the VP candidates, Kamala Harris, and whoever Trump chooses. So that's early on. That sets the stage. That makes the VP choice much more important. Okay. Partly because it highlights that Kamala Harris is next in line. So if you put Biden there, not next in line, she's a heartbeat away. And maybe it would be reassuring because Trump is older, not in the same physical or mental condition as Biden, but he is older. It is a risk that, his age, his condition, his overall condition. He's obviously much sharper mentally than Biden, but he is somewhat overweight. He is 78. Those are risk factors making his VP a much more important choice than usual because there's a reasonable chance his VP could have to step in for
Well,
Trump.
it's before we go, and we're going to talk about the VP candidates. And folks, let me suggest two things. One, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, do so. And secondly, as we mentioned, these candidates for vice president that only Trump gets a vote on. Why don't you comment as far as who you think would be the best vice president that you would want to see? But before we get to that, Jeff, of course, we know that Joe Biden purposely selected Kamala Harris because he said before his pick, I'm going to pick a black woman. And he was, a lot of people said that pandering to the black community. But I want to show a clip recently, this was on CNN, of how the polling shows that Trump is picking up historic levels of support, and the support for Joe Biden within the black community, and certainly among black men, is just, as the pollster says here, cratering.
Holy cow, look at this. Joe Biden was up by 80 points among this group back at this point in 2020. Look at where that margin has careened down towards. It's now just, get this, 37 points. I'm like speechless because you always look at history and you go, okay, this is a historic moment. If this polling is anywhere near correct, we are looking at a historic moment right now where black voters under the age of 50, which have historically been such a big part of the Democratic coalition, are leaving it in droves.
Wow, that's insane.
And so there you go, Jeff. Support among blacks under the age of 50 went from 80% now down to 37%. We'll have to see if that holds. But if it does, the other thing isn't bad news just for Joe Biden. It's bad news for any number of Democratic candidates seeking election to the House and to the Senate. And so let's not forget that another major part of this whole election year will be who will control the House and the Senate, and that remains obviously to be seen.
It's a positive factor that blacks are now much more likely to vote for Trump than they have been in the past, or much more likely to vote for Republicans. But let's not overstate it. There's a lot to come out in the next 5 months on the message of the two parties, on their organization, on their money. MOM, mom, as I like to say. So it's important, Terry, but let's not overstate it. There's a lot yet to happen. There's Iran possibly being within a year or less of having the nuclear bomb capability. There's the war between Hamas and Israel. There's how fast does inflation come down? If it does, that does help Biden. How bad is immigration? How many more murders will we see by illegal immigrants? All of those things matter. We can't predict them all.
I would say those
That's
are
gonna
all
affect the-
those issues all favor Trump.
They do.
I mean,
and the question.
Trump was starving Iran for money. Joe Biden gives him, wants to do a deal for some reason, and so that the war in the Middle East, it would be horrific if Iran got a nuclear bomb. And just again, news today that they are apparently have some software that's going to make it easier for them to make a nuclear bomb. So
the only thing Biden has to possibly offset that, he's going to be focusing on abortion. Can he make that the major issue it became in 2022 in the midterms? He's going to be focusing on January 6th. Are people really afraid that Trump is going to incite a riot? Those are his two issues.
I would agree with you. Those are probably the things that he can hammer or try to hammer. But I would also argue we're looking backwards. January 6th, is old news. The Dobbs decision on abortion, now old news. It's not shocking anymore as it was in 2022 on Dobbs. So what we're not let's pay attention to this. What we're not hearing from the Biden camp is what's your vision for the future? What would you do in a second term? And what he has said is, I'm not going to renew the tax cuts that Trump passed in 2017, which expire next year. Well, okay, then we ought to point out for our viewers, if Biden were the president and does not renew the Trump tax cuts, that means everybody's taxes are going to go up. And it's not going to be just the people making over $400,000.
Well, he will try to twist that as much as he can. He won't. His message will. Joe Biden can do almost nothing in the next 5 months. He's incompetent and incapable. But his team, his hundreds of millions of dollars, will try to do that to convince America that they should be afraid of the instability, the chaos. That's what they say. That's what Nikki Haley was saying when she was running against Trump. She said chaos followed Trump wherever he went. You will see that ad against Trump played now for the Democrats. I'm not saying it's a great argument.
I was going to say,
all he can argue.
What do we think we have now? The border is nothing but chaos. The Middle East is chaos. Iran, as we just talked about, possibly getting a nuclear war. We've got China flying jets over the Philippines and our other allies. So, where is the stability for them to talk about chaos about Trump? Maybe you don't like his management style, but the economy was better, the world was at peace, and we had a secure border. As the border czar, as Tom Homan, who is the former head of the border security, had said that was the best border security under Trump in 40 years. So, it's interesting, Jeff, and I'll let you have a word here, but it's just interesting because it's the first time in your lifetime and mine that voters have had the opportunity to pick between two men who have already been in the White House. And it's a different election because we can compare the Trump record to the Biden record.
Okay, we only have half the show left. So let's get to the VP choice, Terry, because there's a lot to go
Let me
through.
bring up a graphic for the viewers. This is from Fox News, and it said down there, according to Fox sources, this is the short list of who would be on the list for selection as Trump's vice president. And Trump kind of intimated he's already made his selection, but he's not going to announce it until the Republican convention coming up next month. So from left to right, we have Doug Burgum, the governor of North Dakota, Florida Senator Marco Rubio, who would be a Hispanic, of course, J.D. Vance, rather newly elected senator from Ohio, Tom Cotton from Arkansas, Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, Representative Byron Donalds of Florida, he's in the Panhandle down there, Elaine Stefanik, New York Congresswoman, and Ben Carson, who was housing secretary under Trump in the first term. So of those, Jeff, let me keep them up there. What do you think of those?
Well, we can eliminate a few. They're there because Trump, for various reasons, wanted to pay homage to them, so he put them on. This is the list of the 8 who are being officially vetted. Now, there are others. These are being vetted by other than the Secret Service or the federal vetting, and that's going on by the Trump team. But we can say with quite assurance that Dr. Ben Carson, as admirable as he is, and he has a tremendously interesting and respected life story as a neurosurgeon, but at 72, as a neurosurgeon, as a guy who didn't do that well when he ran for president in 2016 against Trump, he's not going to be the VP pick. Elise Stefanik at 39 comes across as younger, despite her 10 years of experience in Congress, despite her devotion to Trump and the Trump platform. She's not going to be the choice. And Byron Donalds, as admirable as he is, he's an authentically black guy who's got a great story to tell. He's tremendously good as a fighter, in terms of verbal fighting, verbal dexterity, presenting the platform and presenting the views of Donald Trump. Number one, a major problem, he has the 12th Amendment problem. You may be able to get around it, but I think they're not going to take the risk that what the 12th Amendment does is make it we would say difficult for the electors from Florida to vote for if they have the same person as a VP and presidential candidate coming from Florida.
Yeah, it's hard.
That's a problem for Marco Rubio.
It's a problem when you're from both from the same state.
So that we've eliminated 4 right there, and then we can turn to the people who do have a somewhat serious chance, I would say, some more than others, of being the nominee of Trump. Let's turn to Tim Scott. He's a senator.
Now, I'm having a hard time hearing you, so if you could speak up a bit.
Okay. Yeah, let's turn to Tim Scott. He's been a senator for 10 years, so he has some U.S. senator, some
Tim Scott, again, that's a senator from South Carolina.
Right, and Trump likes him. He's articulate, but I don't think he brings, at 58, what Trump could use is the gravitas of somebody who knows well domestic policy, foreign policy, can go out in the stump and can give people assurance that here's a VP that, in a sense, reinforces any doubts people may have about Trump. Even though Trump was president for 4 years, they still have some doubts as to whether he has the overall capabilities they would like on domestic policy and foreign policy. And I don't think Tim Scott...
I don't find him to be much, as a vice president. He might... We just saw the black vote going for Trump in much stronger percentages than they had historically. Now, maybe Tim Scott would help with the black vote. But I think Trump appreciates Tim Scott. I just don't know. Here's the thing I want to point out that we need to say. This is a very important selection, more so than ever, because Trump can't run again. And we know that. Normally, we don't know if someone is going to be a lame duck president. We thought Trump would maybe have a second term. Turned out he didn't. He lost in 2020. But now we know. And so who he selects as vice president, we also have to say, is Trump kind of designating that this is the guy I'm selecting to carry on the Trump revolution within the Republican Party, to make it a bigger tent, to make it more focused on strong national defense and blue collar guys, and to get away from the country club Republicans that it had been for so long with the likes of the Bushes, as an example. So
let's go
that
to
might
the
give us
top three.
that might give us some leads as to the kind of personality he would select.
Let's go to the top three.
All right, hang on one sec. Hang on a second. So we talked about Tim Scott, and go ahead
Let's go
and
to
pick it
J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance, he's been a U.S. Senator from Ohio for 2 years. He's very young, at 39, but and also well. Let me just say who the top three are, and then we can go through in detail. J.D. Vance, U.S. Senator from Ohio. Doug Burgum, 2 terms in North Dakota, and Tom Cotton, 45, 10 years as a U.S. Senator from Arkansas, Congressman before that, military guy, served in Afghanistan, served in Iran. Those are your top three, I think. Vance, Burgum, Tom Cotton. 2 senators and a former governor.
I would agree with that. Now, there's always the chance, and Trump would probably like to do this, that we could have Trump pick someone who's not on anyone's list, and he comes out and gives us a surprise. And
Absolutely.
That would match Donald Trump's personality, I
By
think.
the way, I don't have any idea who that would be. You might, Terry. These 8, I think, seriously might have been an initial thought. We've narrowed it to 3. I think these are the 3. You're absolutely right.
Well, so Burgum, the 3 would be Burgum, Vance, and Tom Cotton.
Right, and let's take...
Now, what if he picked the governor of Arkansas, Sarah Huckabee, who was his press secretary?
Ain't gonna happen. Ain't gonna happen. Way too risky, too young, too inexperienced, doesn't have the gravitas. Ain't gonna happen. There's no reason to do that. Right now, he doesn't have to throw a Hail Mary. He's in the driver's seat. If all things continue to go this way, Donald Trump will be president again come November 5. He ain't going to go with Sarah Huckabee.
You know, the other thing I would say is often, almost all the time, presidential candidates select a vice president they think will help them win. Maybe
Right.
Trump will do that, but of those 3 that we're picking, I think Trump is such a unique character in the history of American politics that the voters are going to go with Trump, and they'll be satisfied with whoever he picks as vice president, more or less. But I don't think his vice presidential pick is going to be purposeful to help him carry a state. Now, a name that we're not saying, and could be a surprise, and is the governor of Virginia. And that's a possibility. And Virginia is surprising because the last poll I've seen, Trump and Biden are tied in Virginia. So that could be a possibility. That could be a surprise curveball. But his name is escaping me right at the moment. But the governor of Virginia,
Glenn Youngkin.
Glenn Youngkin, right. And he doesn't have any national experience. He's only been in politics for, 2 years now or so, since he was elected governor, maybe 3 years.
He's a very strong candidate. He came out of nowhere, successful businessman, ran a perfect campaign to become governor of Virginia. And you'd look to him.
And beat a former governor.
He has verbal dexterity. Well, he would be a strong candidate, but again, too risky because there's too much we don't know about him. Don't go there. Here, let's cut right to the chase, and we can then consider the 2 lesser lights. If you had a pick right now, I'm going with Tom Cotton. He has everything that Trump wants. He's got the youth, but not too young. He's 45. He's got the look of a president, and he's smart. He's got the background from Harvard Law, Harvard College. He's got 10 years of experience as a U.S. Senator. He's a combat veteran in Iraq and Afghanistan, and he presents well. He'd be a fighter on the stump. He'd be the guy to go after Biden if Biden is the candidate, somebody else. There's nothing wrong with Tom Cotton, nothing that hurts you, and there's a lot that helps you. I mean, I defy you, Terry. Pick up now. You tell me why I'm wrong. Why Tom Cotton is not a
No,
good
I
candidate
think
to do either.
Tom Cotton is an excellent member of the Senate. As you say, he is also a House member. He's been in the military. Uh, I forget if he went to Harvard Law. I mean, he's
Yeah,
also,
Harvard. Yeah,
yeah.
Harvard College.
So,
Harvard
I
Law.
mean, here's a guy that has an excellent resume. If I had to knock him for anything, he's not a dynamic speaker, but he's good enough. I mean, he's in the
Good
Senate.
enough. Yeah.
He's been elected to the
Right.
House and the Senate. So he's not a Kamala Harris when it comes to speaking, and he would be a fighter. I mean, not only he's served in combat, but he's willing to poke others in the eye verbally, and I think Trump likes that. Now, my other top pick I think would be J.D. Vance. I would to bring it down between Tom Cotton and J.D. Vance. As you say, J.D. Vance, very young, 39 years old. That's how old Richard Nixon was, a young selection for Eisenhower back in 1952. So J.D. Vance would be tied with Richard Nixon as, I think, the youngest person to be selected as vice president.
Excuse me, Terry, but the major drawback to J.D. Vance is that he's in his second year as a U.S.
And
Senator
he's been to
from
Yale
Ohio.
Law School. I'm sorry, but go ahead.
Yeah. But the main problem is, do you want to give up the Senate seat in Ohio? Because although Ohio is more and more Republican, it ain't a sure thing. And if you don't pick up the seats that I know you think are possible to pick up in the Senate race, and if you're still close, do you want to give up one of your Republican seats or possibly give it up?
Well, why
if
wouldn't you use
lose
the
it to
same argument with Tom Cotton then?
Well, because Arkansas is solidly Republican.
I mean, in
Arkansas,
both cases, you have a Republican governor who could replace them if they are vice president.
for a short time, but you're going to have
And
to have
that
an
would
election.
serve for 2 years, so that would carry you halfway through the Trump election, and then you'd have
Point
to.
is, I
On
don't-
that point, Tom Cotton would be stronger for the reason you said. If we had to worry if Trump would had to worry about losing senators, you would be better to pick Tom Cotton because his replacement
way in
would
which,
almost surely be elected for a full term.
here's another way in which, as you know, J.D. Vance hurts you. In 2016, when Trump was running, J.D. Vance was a never Trumper. Those statements are wide, they're public, they're on tape, they're going to come back to haunt you. People are going to be confused. This is the guy who Trump picked to be his VP, and he said on tape he was a never Trumper. It can be explained away, Terry, but why do you need it when you got a guy like Tom Cotton that doesn't present that problem? And at 45, he's a bit more experienced, comes across as a bit stronger, 10 years in the U.S. Senate. Why do you need the problem of J.D. Vance, who's 39, 2 years in the Senate, doesn't have the same
And
accomplishments?
here's the
as Tom
thing
Cotton?
before we wrap up, and we're getting close, but Kamala Harris, not only is Biden weak, Kamala Harris is the worst vice president in my lifetime. I mean, I think by easily. And so when we're talking about Trump picking someone, Trump has a whole bench here of people. Every single one of these people would put Kamala Harris to shame. And as old and feeble as Joe Biden is, that has to be a main point. That if we're voting for Joe Biden, we're probably going to be seeing his vice president, Kamala Harris, become the president at some point over the next 4 years, were Biden to be returned to office. So again, for that reason, and for reasons, as I mentioned, that Trump can't run again, this is going to be one of the most important selections of vice president in American history.
And folks, a week from today, roughly 150 hours from the time we're taping, you'll see the debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. You'll have a chance to make some of the same reflections.
So we got to, don't forget to tell us who you want for vice president. Jeff and I will see you next time. In the meantime, try to stay cool. Thanks, Jeff.